Welcome to the Bruce Lee Podcast, a podcast about Bruce Lee's life and philosophy. Hi, I'm Shannon Lee.
And I'm Sharon Lee.
And you are listening to the Bruce Lee Podcast.
Welcome.
For those of you who don't know, Bruce Lee is my father, and I'm also the CEO of the Bruce Lee Family Company and the chairperson of the Bruce Lee Foundation.
Awesome. And I am the CMO and Chief Creative Officer at the Bruce Lee Family Company.
Yay. So this episode, we are going to talk about originating and innovating.
All right, cool. What do we mean by that in the context of Bruce Lee?
Wow. You know, my father had a real drive to, as we talked about before, honestly express himself and self-actualize. And just in the process of self-actualizing, you are originating. You are creating something that is original. You are innovating yourself. You are in a process of becoming. So that's one way that we can talk about it, but my father was really an innovator in many different ways. I mean, he created his own exercise equipment and martial arts equipment. He was an artist and a poet. He was a writer. He was a creative writer as well as a philosophical writer, and he designed jewelry, and it just kind of goes on and on and on.
He was an overachiever. Let's just go.
Yeah, but, you know, basically we're just talking about tapping into your creative spirit and putting it out there in the world.
So, can you read this first kind of quote that we have about our insecurity about who we are and how we tend to imitate, and this is the opposite of that.
Right. I mean, my father was really clear on this, and what he said was, we tend to have more faith in what we imitate than what we originate. We feel we cannot derive a sense of absolute certitude from anything which has its root in us. The most poignant sense of insecurity comes from standing alone, and we are not alone when we imitate.
Yeah, so we are basically just seeking the security of being part of the crowd, being part of the conformity when we imitate, and I guess it's comfortable for a bit until we start to get that restless feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you know the phrase, there's safety in numbers, and then also there's validation. You know, when you're doing something that is already proven to be successful, then there's some validation in that. And like you said, it works for a while, but at some point, you know, there's usually some little gnawing feeling in all of us when we do things that are against our own nature, just for the sake of holding up an image.
Yeah, and I think that right now, like, for many years, the buzzword has been innovation. You know, people have innovation departments, and you know, the whole digital world wants to innovate, and it's kind of watered down, and I want to kind of go back to the potency of what your father meant, and this notion of, in life, what more can you ask for than to be real, and to fulfill one's potential instead of wasting energy on actualizing one's dissipating image. So, like, he was really committed to the real.
Yes. To being real. And, you know, for each of us, that's something different. For him, obviously, we got the experience of what that was. And that is why Bruce Lee is such a phenomenon, because we got the experience of the real person that really was Bruce Lee. And his message to all of us is that we have the ability to do that as well. We have the ability to hone our own potential and our personal identities.
So I want to have you read this as an answer to a question that I get a lot. You know, sometimes I'm in companies, I'm creative coaching and dealing with lots of people who are in inquiry. But, you know, the biggest question that a lot of people have that they just really can't answer themselves is like, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Like, what should I be doing to create meaning? And it's this very scary question, and so some people think, I should be digging water wells in Africa, or I should, they have all these kind of outside measures of what a meaningful life is. And if you would just read his response to that.
Right. He basically said, you are required only to perform your own mission in life without any thoughts of aggressiveness or competition. I think this is really important because I think one of the reasons that my father was so successful is because he had times when things didn't go as planned, or where he got a little too comfortable and didn't really pay attention or have awareness, and he learned a lot of lessons around those times. He used to talk about whenever you have adversity in your life, it's really a signal to you that things like defeat and failure are actually, you should never accept defeat, unless you are just ready to give up, because defeat is actually a signal that you've done something wrong. So you can really look at that and figure out what it is that you've done, and it's actually a path to the truth and success.
And also, just to link it back to our last episode where we talk about honestly expressing yourself, it seems like originating is almost the material act of honestly expressing yourself. So if you're honestly expressing yourself, you're just going to be making and creating all these things and experiences that are from your inner light, therefore originating, right?
Right, like the expression of what is honestly within yourself is the act of originating. You're originating your personal expression out into the world, and it's something that only you can do.
And also, again, I don't want to, beat a dead horse here, but like this whole, like doing it without the thought of competition or aggressiveness. And I want to say that this whole model of competition, which is very prevalent in business and, just in our culture, we just kind of take it as, well, this is the only way to be. And especially sometimes even women, who think, like, I got to kind of make it in a man's world, like, just take this on and say, like, well, this is, what I have to do. But actually, your own dad, who's kind of this model of masculinity, is saying, no. That's wrong.
Well, I think if the word competition motivates you in some way, then I think the best way to look at it is that you should be in competition with yourself. That you should be pushing yourself to be the more cultivated version of yourself, the more, expressive version of yourself, the more honed version of yourself, as opposed to in competition with other people. You may see things on the outside like, oh, that married couple, they're so happy all the time, and then come to find out, like, when they're at home and nobody's around, they're fighting all the time. Or, oh, that businessman, he's so successful, and then come to find out, he's doing all these deals on the side, or whatever, like, nothing is ever as it seems, so you shouldn't be putting your trust and faith in those things that you really know nothing about. What you know is yourself. And aside from that, and additionally to that, if you're not in competition with everyone around you, and you're not being aggressive in that way, life is much more peaceful. You can live in harmony with the rest of the people around you and let them have their own experiences.
Right, and we'll get to harmony in a future episode because it's its whole other thing. So what do you think he meant when he said, we have great work ahead of us and it needs devotion and much, much energy?
Well, here's the thing. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode about honestly expressing yourself. It's not an easy thing to do. When we talked about honestly expressing yourself, we talked about not lying to yourself. And he also talks about, like, it's really easy to put on a show. But if you're really going to go inside and be completely true to yourself and hone that, that's the work of a lifetime. It really is the work of a lifetime. And so it requires devotion, because it's really easy to want to slip into comfort and,
distraction
and safety and all that kind of stuff. You should, and I know through my own practice, like, I have discovered safety in change and in discovery, in the not knowing. You can actually get to a place where you feel very calm and centered in the not knowing, in the journey, so that you can have this excitement about what's coming next and what you're going to learn.
Yeah, and I think part of, for me, when I read that about how much energy it takes is if you have a passion to really find that inner light and create something from it, if you want to originate, then all of the ways that I'm wasting energy, and it could just be one too many Kardashian episodes that I watch, or any other kind of like junk culture stuff where you're just zoned out, it's fine every now and then. But if it's my practice, meaning if it's my daily practice, if it's my weekly practice, I'm really pouring this energy and light that I could be using to originate into just this total void.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a little last episode, that anything that you do in life, you're putting energy toward it, right? So even if it's watching mindless TV, that's where your energy is going, right? I